I have a list here in front of me of, I don't know how many people, but it's a lot. I have a list here. It's called the Quack list. It's at the Quack list on Twitter. They're not necessarily quacks. These are people who are, well, some of them are quacks. These are people that are doctors or influencers. My brother Mark and I have ended up on one of the Quack lists for some things that we said on Joe Rogan's podcast. But it's okay. I actually think the Quack list can be a very productive thing and a great thing because it can teach us, like, hey, look, you're following this guy. Not everything this guy says is gospel. Maybe nothing they say is gospel, but maybe a couple things are good, a couple things are bad. We have to watch out. This is like what to watch out for sure. So it's not necessarily demonizing all the people that are on here by any means. Mark and I are actually friends with most of these people and pretty good friends with most of them, so I hope it doesn't offend anybody. But that's not the goal. The goal is like, can we get better at what we're trying to do in pursuing health and helping people with health? Most of these people have appeared on Mark's podcast or on Joe Rogan's podcast, or we've appeared on their podcast. And so the first guy I want to talk about who I'm friends with and I like a lot personally is Ben Greenfield, but he's got a lot of questionable stuff that you question.
Yeah, I don't watch Ben Greenfield that much because it's not really kind of worth the time to do it, in my opinion. So I think he's like interested in like EMF and stuff. He's also interested in like water and like putting water through, and I'm just remembering back, he's like interested in like filtering water through like beads and stuff.
It's likely that there could be giardia in there, a lot of kind of nasty heavy metals, and then you just drink.
Chinese medicine stuff where he starts talking about Chinese medicine, he starts talking about in traditional Chinese medical terms. It's like it's just woo-woo. It's like,
it's too woo-woo for you.
It's not even too woo-woo, it's just like completely.
There's not a lot of science behind it, is what you're saying?
He's funny. He's like quackish at the point of being funny.
It is interesting though, because a lot of these people that are, quackish, as you say, also have they also do come along with some of like the first things, like they're the first guy with this, or the first guy you've seen.
Well, that's why they're so exciting. Like, that's why it's so exciting. But like, what has he done that's been like important?
So you can see the excitement in it, like, because you're like, oh, that's new, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's super fun. Yeah, it's super fun following.
That's what
this
keeps
space.
it.
Yeah. That's why these people are popular, right?
Now I don't know him, but I heard him on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I actually didn't think he did a great job debating the guy, the filmmaker from the Game Changers, James. I don't think Chris Kresser did a really good job debating him. I've heard Chris Kresser on a lot of other podcasts, including his own, where I thought he's had excellent information, but in that particular case, I felt like he failed. Why do you have him on this list?
Okay, this is a really good example of what I've been talking about. I actually wrote a really long post on Chris Kresser about his views on cholesterol.
They've done controlled feeding studies where they've fed people 2 to 4 eggs a day. And those show that in 75% of cases, that has zero impact on blood cholesterol levels. There is no evidence that consuming dietary cholesterol increases the risk of blood cholesterol.
He only had one part. He only had one post that I posted on, and he has apparently like a 4-part series. My response to him was like 10 times longer than his post. It was very detailed, study after study, and it took that much time and that much going through studies and like hours and hours of my time to actually debunk that piece. And that's sort of a comment on all of this whole list, because the issue is this. I know by reading a lot of their stuff and by seeing a lot of their stuff that it's wrong. Like, I can just see it immediately. I know that that's not acceptable because like people need to know exactly why. So this is just my opinion. Whenever I say this is my opinion. So with him, it's just he basically he doesn't really know how to interpret evidence. I can just say that, and he's wrong about a lot of different things, and he makes these really interesting and fun stories that have no basis in any good evidence, and actually is contradicted by a lot of evidence. That's why I don't know. We'd have to actually sort through specific examples.
You don't have a specific thing.
Cholesterol. I have cholesterol, but I know it's not just cholesterol. It's like a ton of different things, but I can't say it off of the top of my head because I don't know exactly. I can't like be like, oh yeah, that. I don't remember.
Speaking of cholesterol, as I'm stepping through this whole keto world, I met Dave Feldman.
Yeah.
Who
I know him really well. I mean, his stuff.
Talks about cholesterol a lot.
Yeah.
But you seem to have a problem with him. When I first met him, I thought it was really exciting because I'm like, oh, this guy seems like he knows everything about cholesterol. He's got it down. What does he not have down that maybe is wrong, or why don't you agree with him? Because it sounds like it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think there's some validity to the idea that high HDL, low triglycerides is protective for cardiovascular. And in fact, we've known that for a really long time before Dave came around. And then there's some idea that if you have those and you have high LDL, then maybe it's not as harmful. Sure. But he goes the other step of suggesting that LDL is actually beneficial. Like it's going to improve your longevity. There's no evidence for that. When you look at the randomized controlled trial literature, you assign people to reduce their LDL. It's always is either neutral because you don't have enough statistical power, or it's beneficial and improves their mortality. It's never it's never making them worse. So he looks at epidemiological evidence and says that. The problem with epidemiological evidence is that people with low cholesterol are often sick. It's the same as the vitamin D story. People with low vitamin D are often sick. So
you posted about that the other day.
Yes,
well,
I think
right?
so, yep.
Now, you said...
So you can't, that's why epidemiology is a problem.
Yeah, the people with low cholesterol die.
Yes. Earlier.
They die earlier,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you say because they're sick.
Yes.
So
cancer,
then,
for example.
Yeah, okay, so like cancer will like lower it way down.
Yep.
Do most people not have low cholesterol like that if they're healthy? Is that the thing? Like, so you have to be actually really sick to get your cholesterol that low? Or, I mean, so then what does it say about like vegans and people that have it that low? Or those aren't the people that are dying?
No, but okay, so there's a group of people with low cholesterol because they're healthy, and then there's a group of low cholesterol because they're sick. And there's so many people that, compared to people with normal cholesterol, since there actually probably aren't a whole lot of people with low cholesterol who are healthy because they're healthy, I think that's probably uncommon to have be healthy with low cholesterol. I don't even know anybody like that. I don't even have that low of a cholesterol, and I'm like healthy.
Yeah.
Because that's so uncommon, and because sicker people with low cholesterol is probably pretty common, or because people with low cholesterol who are sick like die a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a powerful effect. That's probably why. That would be the explanation why. I would have to look at the data and actually make sure that this is the case. And we'd have to, and this has been looked at for like decades, ever since like the 1980s. Like the famous people who did the trans fat was bad.
Yeah.
We were looking at this like really hardcore, like really good scientists have been looking at this a long time ago, and then controlling for all sorts of different factors to try to pull out. And the overwhelming consensus is this is what explains the epidemiology. And when you look at the randomized controlled trials, you don't even need to, in fact, entirely explain the epidemiology in the sense that we know that actively lowering cholesterol causes people to live longer.
Yeah.
Whether or not, whatever the cause of the low cholesterol in the epidemiological literature causing people to die. But granted, if you do have really low cholesterol for like no reason, and you're like thin and you don't feel well, you should think about things.
Yeah, I've actually quoted this one study over and over, which I'll stop doing now, by the way, after I'm talking to you. But basically, like, there is one study that says like 75% of the people involved in this study had cholesterol under 200, and they died, and then the people with the higher cholesterol, those are the ones that lived, right? It was like, so then that just made me think, like, well, if you have high cholesterol, why worry about it? But it's not as easy as an open and shut, like one study thing, because those people were sick.
There's another really interesting phenomenon. So if you look at laboratory animals and you look at their weights over the course of their lives, they go like this, like down, right? It's like a hump. You look at blood glucose, you look at cholesterol, you look at all sorts of different thyroid hormone, it's all like this, right? Mm-hmm. It's just like people who are near the end of their life, they starts to dip for all sorts of metabolites. You actually find that same association with blood glucose as well. People with really low blood glucose among people who are old, those are the people who die earlier. So epidemiological studies here are not helpful at all in this respect.
What about somebody like Dave Asprey and Bulletproof? He's a huge influence on a lot of people. But a lot of the science just sometimes isn't there to support a lot of the things he's saying.
He's a lot like Greenfield. He likes to just hype things and say things are crazy. Yeah, I mean, also he has his own anecdote like about the mold and all that stuff. And he believes that maybe. Why doesn't he have like people doing studies then if it's like a real thing? Why doesn't he actually get real scientists? Because once you show something using science, then you can apply it to everybody. So if you're really passionate, in my opinion, like my nerdy opinion, like if you're really passionate about something working, you should try to get science to show it, because then we can help everybody, because then you convinced everybody.
Sure.
Whereas if you're just like saying it yourself and then you die someday, then it's lost with you.
There's no proof.
It's lost with you, and then it never gets into practice. I feel like if you're passionate about helping people and your legacy and living on all that stuff, you should try to show it with science, and then you will have so much more of an impact. And he doesn't care about showing it with science, and so that always makes me think, judge people by their actions, not by their words.
Yeah.
Always makes me think he's not really interested in that. He's interested in the money. That's how I think about it.
Do you think it's hard to say, like, do you think it's like, is it just money, or do you think like these people have, I think like most of the people that are on this list, they have like this, I think they feel good about like helping people, and I think money is part of it, but I don't know if they're in it like just for the money. I think there's some sort of like like ego in helping people or something.
Ego, yeah.
I know I have to admit, I get a hell of a rush of just helping people. When I can help somebody change their diet or change their life, there's some sort of ego boost there,
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Oz, he was a surgeon, right? And actually a really well-respected surgeon at Columbia. He's a professor of surgery at Columbia University, a really good medical school, like super good medical school. And apparently super smart, really good at what he was doing. And so he's a smart man, but he's like, he peddles stuff,
Snake oil salesman, yeah.
I want you to write it down. Garcinia cambogia, because it may be the simple solution you've been looking for to bust your body fat for good.
Now I've got the #1 miracle in a bottle to burn your fat.
Lightning in a bottle. It's a miracle flour to fight fat.
Right, totally. Well, why? He probably thinks that it's helping people. And probably if you sell people things, you give people hope. I think he actually has even said this, you want to give people hope. If you give people hope, sometimes you can help people with that hope.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how they rationalize it. Maybe there's a part of that that's true. But I don't want people to be doing things that are ineffective whenever they could be doing things that are effective.
Sure.
So that's kind of there's a weird, interesting question there about quackery, even quackery itself, giving people fake treatments. Is there something wrong? There's something good about that. It's not entirely bad. I'm not saying.
And then like Dave Asprey says things like, I'm going to live to be like 180 years old.
Look, I'm going to make it to at least 180 if I want to.
And I think that offers like
I
a lot of
think he's
people.
full of crap there.
I think it offers a lot of people a lot of false hope that they can live longer if they become bulletproof, right? And I just think that there's zero evidence of that, and I think it's a bad message to send to people.
He's marketing himself.
Yeah.
I think he's consciously marketing. He doesn't believe that.
But then again, a lot of the things that he's come up with, I've actually used and implemented in my diet and in my life to actually help me. So it's like I have a love-hate relationship with these things.
Well, maybe what he's saying, the things that are practical, like do this to lose weight. Maybe you can listen to that stuff. You don't even necessarily need to know why, but maybe it works because he's tried it.
Yeah.
Right? But then like the big claims about science are maybe more suspicious.
Yeah. I try to listen to people that are like more forward thinking, I think, and then disseminate from what they said if it's good or not, And it's like, I try not to trust anybody.
Why do you think the people who are more forward thinking are better?
I don't know. I'm always been.
I'm really
I've always
asking.
been kind of a contrarian. When somebody says like eat all vegetables, I'll say eat all meat. That's kind of the way I always think.
Yeah.
And I've always learned. I don't know. I feel like almost everything I've always learned has been the exact opposite. So I maybe start at the exact opposite and work backwards. I'm not sure, but the way I'm wired, I always think like this guy's got something new. It's going to be good.
Well, so that's why
I'm disappointed a lot too, though.
Yes.
Because nothing ever works.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so that's the reason I do the quack list stuff, because everybody else is saying this hypey stuff, and I'm being the contrarian here. This is why we're coming from the same.
And nuance doesn't really sell anything.
That's right. That's why I have to call it the quack list.
Yeah. What about? I've heard David Sinclair on Rogan.
I'm just as bad as these quacks. I'm like a quack about the quack list.
I know. I've listened to David Sinclair many times on Joe Rogan's podcast.
And then I also take at night some metformin, which is probably the most radical thing that I take, which is a prescribable drug for diabetes.
I actually think a lot of the stuff he said were actually like out of touch and a little bit ridiculous.
Really?
Like, well, if you're not a scientist, like why is he taking metformin?
Yes.
Why is he doing all like? I just think that he's out of line with a lot of the stuff that he's telling. Like, I guess it's okay. He's a scientist. He's messing around. He's trying things out. But like, he's literally telling it to millions of people, and they're going to want to go out and try it. And I think that's. It'd be interesting. It's like, I'm trying this thing, but don't anybody go try this. He's just like talking about doing it. And I felt like it was a little like irresponsible.
Totally.
Of somebody who's that high up, I guess.
Maybe there are ways to talk about what you're actually doing that are questionable. Like you're not sure, you're just trying it. And then whenever you do that, you do it in a certain way to make sure that other people don't get the wrong idea and start doing it with you. and maybe that's good. But yeah, whenever he was doing that, he wasn't trying that very hard.
On the flip side, I don't know if you know who he is, but I love people like Dr. Tony Huge, who's like, I'm trying every steroid and SARM on the planet, and I'm going to tell you what it does. And for some reason,
I like that too. You know,
I want to see it. Like, even though I know like it's not great that he's telling people this, and I know him and he's a friend of mine and stuff like that, but like I'm kind of like, you're a little irresponsible and dangerous, but you're also awesome because you're giving us this information that no one else is going to give us ever, and we're never going to be able to find it. So
it's true.
There's always two sides of these coins, all of it.
So for him, he's like, but he's kind of like doing it. That's his shtick, right? Like, yeah. With Sinclair, the difference between him and Sinclair's like a Harvard scientist, and in fact, I got into the most trouble about this particular case because some people at my school like him a lot. In fact, know him, and interviewed with him and all sorts of other things. So the problem is he's such a respected scientist and he's saying these things as if, and then he's giving caveats like, I don't recommend this, but he's saying it in such a way that like, this is the thing. Yeah, you know what I mean? So like, even if you listen to his caveats, you're like, I've got to try it. Yeah. You know? And there's no good evidence for any of this stuff.
Interestingly enough, I listened to him very detailed on Joe Rogan's podcast several times, and I didn't find anything like new or interesting that I haven't heard of before. And that's like a lot of times, like, that's why he's not one of my guys. Like he didn't have something like, oh yeah, metformin, this and that. I've heard all that a million times. Like I guess it's not something that I was like hyped up about, you know? So it's like,
You're already with Ben Greenfield. You already know about all that stuff. Yeah.
I've already seen it all because I've seen it all from like 37 other people before. One of the guys, this is going to be fun to talk about. So I read all his books. I actually really like a lot of what he said. Is Gary Taubes, but probably for reasons that like I just think that if you were to like remove processed carbohydrates from the human diet, like blow them up, extinguish them from the planet, that we wouldn't have the same problems we're having today. Now, I could be wrong because we might have figured out a way to make everything else bad for you, because that's what we did. Like we made things that weren't bad for you by combining them all and stripping them down and doing all the things that we do to process them. I've followed a lot of what Gary says. I don't think, now I know that the mechanisms that he talks about aren't correct. Yeah. The actually like what he says to do, like don't eat carbs and move forward, actually worked really effective for me. So I'm like in that weird thing. And then also another caveat on Gary Taubes is that I read a lot of the stuff that he replies to you and Lane on Twitter, because I'm so into like Gary Taubes fighting with people. I don't know why I love it, but I love seeing it. And he always has this response that I've never figured out. And he's like, that's great. That's easy for you to say because you're a thin person. Fat people don't have that same issue. And I always think the same thing because I come from a family that's obese, and I don't want to be the guy going like, well, it doesn't work for me. But in a way, I can see what he means. Like, I'm not going to look like Mike O'Hearn no matter what I do, right? So like that's the way I look at it. Go like, not like there's people that are genetically just gifted. They just come out of the box like that. And then there's these people who are, you know, really, really obese. And like, is there actual difference, or are we enough the same to where I'm just fooling myself?
It's a brain difference. It's probably the genes associated. Whenever they do the studies looking at the genes that are associated with obesity, the genes that are most associated with obesity are mostly in the brain. It's like
leptin and ghrelin and things like that?
I'm not sure if it's leptin and ghrelin. There's a lot of them, and I'm not sure even if we know exactly what the mechanisms are. But we know that they're enriched in like the brain, and the way that we tend to, and the way that I think mainstream obesity research has come to think about it is they just have more of an eating drive.
So is obesity a mental illness?
That's an interesting question.
That's a crazy question I just came up with out of what you said. I mean, you're saying like the things are in the brain that drive you to overeat.
It's probably similar to addiction, yeah.
Most of the people that I know that are on a diet, all they can think about is food when they're on a diet. Because they're just thinking of when they're going to eat next because they're restricting themselves. So.
Like an alcoholic.
It's an interesting thing to think about, though.
Yeah. I think it's the same thing. You know? It's the same. It's an addiction, yeah, for sure. And I think it's the same. It's the same mechanisms that drive it, the same parts of the brain as any sort of drug addiction. Yep.
What about our buddy Mark Sisson? We kind of said the same thing. Like Mark Sisson, paleo diet. He's put out the keto reset diet, which I actually, when I was doing keto, I followed more of what he was saying than probably anybody else. Like I was listening to, reading Taubes books, then moving on to Mark Sisson's books and all these things, but they've all helped me. So like, kind of the same with Mark Sisson. Like he's kind of a well-meaning, good, happy, ripped, shredded older dude.
I just hate him because he's so ripped. That's the
You're jealous of him, kind of. No, seriously, like with Mark, he's actually like a really good dude. He's got a lot of really great things to say, but some of the things he is saying just might not be correct, or maybe he believes that way. Like obviously he's come out with all these salad dressings made with avocado oil because the canola oils and the other oils cause inflammation, and but you're saying that that's not true.
There's no evidence that seed oils cause inflammation at all.
Is there any evidence that seed oils are bad for you at all? Like bad for human consumption at all?
Especially if you compare it to like salad dressing with avocado oil, there's no evidence there's any difference at all. Like I can't even think of any way to make it better or worse. It's like,
can those oils oxidize, like canola oil and other things? I've actually read that but this is coming from a keto carnivore source. So
yeah.
When you eat soybean oil and corn oil specifically, that those can oxidize inside the body, which sounds horrible, but I don't know if that's true or not. Have you ever heard that?
Well,
and what would that even mean if it oxidizes in the body? Is that?
I don't as in accidentally. It's not supposed to do it.
I don't know if it turns into sludge in your body. I don't know what that means.
I don't know.
What I read.
I know that. Yeah, I don't know. I think might be some bad things about corn oil. Mm-hmm. There's some evidence that maybe some seed oils might not be good, like corn oil maybe. I'm a little hesitant about that because there was one really famous study that showed some bad stuff there. But it's not all seed oils.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to say they're all bad when it's like maybe just one is a bad guy.
One or a few or some of the fatty acids are not good. But there might be problems with that study too. There's no evidence that seed oils are harmful to your health. There's no evidence at all. I can't think of anything. And if you can find somebody who finds something, just send it to me, because I've looked into this, thought about this forever. My friends and we don't understand where this is coming from.
Yeah.
Where is it coming from? Why are people saying these things? I think it's just like this lore, this mythology. You can listen like Kate Shanahan. You might have her on sometime. You could pick her brain because she's like the seed oil. She probably knows more about this than anybody. And just try to ask her and figure out where is she getting her information, and how reliable is that?
She's like the anti-seed oil?
Yeah. Her, Nina, I guess, and but her especially. Like she wrote just like a book about it.
Well, let's talk about Nina. Nina Teicholz wrote The Big Fat Surprise. She thinks that butter and meat should be, in the center of our diet, and they don't cause, the saturated fat doesn't cause any harm. And she wants to change the dietary recommendations to sort of reflect that feeling. How do you feel about Nina and her work?
I think her book, Big Fat Surprise, is a really good read. It's like a great read. I think her Twitter and like a lot of the claims you make is really just terrible.
Because we could
it's
pull
like
a clip.
Systematically, she's not smart. What's wrong with her thinking? Like about what? About butter?
About all, like in general, like what's wrong? Like why did she end up on the Quack list? What did she say?
She's everything. She's just like, she constantly hypes and misinterprets and doesn't read studies. She tweets about studies she hasn't read. You can tell she hasn't read them. She can't discuss them intelligently. I don't put this, please. You may be able to.
I'm trying to figure. Yeah, I don't have a specific example.
I don't. I mean, we could easily go on our Twitter and then we could start picking stuff apart. That's part of the reason of this is like when
let's do this. Let's wrap, because we have to wrap really soon anyway.
15 minutes. Yeah.
Let's just take the carnivore movement.
Yeah.
And in the carnivore movement, we'll put me and Mark, because we're involved in it too, and we've spread all this information. We'll put Michaela Peterson in there because she's part of it and she spreads a lot of the same information. We'll put Sean Baker and Paul Saladino in there. What can we do better as a community to help people through this diet not be harmed by it and come out the other side successful? Like, what's going on that's wrong? What could be improved upon? Are there things that we can add in, take away?
Emphasize that plants aren't poisonous for most people. Most people are not going to be poisoned by plants. Along like I followed Saladino the most recently.
Sure.
I've like recently read his book, and I worked with Lane on the Rogan debunking or whatever.
Oh, okay, cool.
I just did a little bit, but
yeah.
Stop talking about the Hadza are not carnivore.
That was weird to me. That seemed like
They're
a
mostly
disconnect.
plant-based. It's like,
That was a real disconnect.
I don't know why he keeps saying that too, and he knows I don't like it. He knows I keep tweeting at him about this, and he knows that me and Lane wrote. But he just keeps saying that they're. I don't understand.
Maybe he's trolling you.
I think he wants to believe, you know. And also the difference is that the Hods of men eat a lot more meat than Hods of women.
Sure.
So there's a way over-representation. Actually, there's some studies that show Hods men eat almost all the meat. And if that's the case, then of course it looks like they're eating a lot of meat, right?
What do you think about Sean's content? Sean Baker, does he?
He's blocked me, so
I
haven't.
He blocked.
I haven't.
But for the most part, I mean, like he really just says like, eat meat. Doesn't matter if it's grass finished, grass fed.
He's right about that. I like that. Yeah.
Hey, eat some meat.
No,
and then like whatever else you have, that's great. But the rest of it's just entertainment. I mean, like that's his diet.
No, I mean, whenever I heard him on your podcast with Paul, he was very reasonable.
Yeah.
And he was right on
Why
all
did
the
he
issues
block
that
you? Were you probably smart ass with him about some?
Like back in the day, I was probably being a dick.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. It's hard to read Twitter in a 100 and however many characters you get, but like 200 and something now. But it's hard to read Twitter when it's just like you're reading this one thing. Because I started out literally hating you. Like I literally was like, this fucking guy, I'm gonna kill him. Like I gotta find him. Oh wait, he knows jujitsu. Forget it. Maybe I won't kill him. But like that's kind of how I would think. And then I'm like, go. What did he say? Oh, he said this about. And then I start reading. Like, let me read the other tweets. What do you mean vegetable oil is not bad? Okay, this guy's definitely an idiot, right? And so I start reading it more and more. I go, oh wait a second, there's no studies. Oh wait a second. Now I go look at Lane and there's no studies, and I look at this and there's no studies, and like. I think all that started, like I started it because I was friends with Lane, like Mark and I have been friends with Lane for a long time. And we started shooting a movie about the ketogenic diet. We shot all this footage and we shot Lane and we filmed everything. And after I did the interview with Lane, I stopped doing the movie.
Oh man.
Because I thought that I have Gary Taubes on tape. I have, every Dave Asprey, name a keto guy, we have him on film and we filmed him. And the stuff came out great, but it's just not the right information anymore.
That's crazy. That's crazy. You interviewed Lane and then you stopped the movie.
I interviewed everybody, and now I want to restart the movie. Though I have an idea. I showed you, like I want to do this movie called Meatheads, which I'm working on. Sort of like what I sent you is not what it's going to be.
Sure.
That's to get people excited about funding it and about making it because
you are really good.
Exciting.
You are really good at telling stories.
Oh, thank you.
You're awesome at it. So
thank you.
Yeah.
There's a certain art to it. It's really just capturing the exciting parts of life, like what's going to make it exciting. Ask them about this, ask them about this, boom,
So yeah, people could stop demonizing plants. People in the carnivore community could stop demonizing plants and just like...
accept that they're here.
Accept that they're here. Michaela has some weird problems with her autoimmunity.
Yeah.
Which I still don't understand completely. And I don't know if I fully believe her story.
I don't understand it either, but I'll tell you that when I eat good, I feel fucking great. And when I don't, I feel like shit.
But you're eating vegetables and plants now, right?
A little bit, but mostly.
Do you think that's in the wrong direction? Do you want to take some of that off?
Okay. No, I don't think that's harming me at all.
Do you think
it's helping me? You know why? Because it's allowing me to feel satiated and full all day long without having a lot of calories in my body.
Okay, so it's actually helping you cut calories having more plants. That's awesome. That's an interesting thing. Yeah.
And I should tell more people about it.
Yeah.
So I just posted about that this morning because that's what I want people to read. I want people to read that I eat an entire thing of lettuce with each steak that I have because I want people to know like this and this equals success, not just this.
Yeah, well, so for me, whenever I tried to eat, like before my jiu-jitsu competition, because I was trying to get rid of fiber, I was trying to eat the beef, like ground meat. I could eat so much. I could eat just an unfreaking real,
3 pounds of it.
Thousands of calories, easy, and then keep going. So I don't understand where these people are getting this satiety thing from, because I could easily put away like 5,000 calories of ground meat a day. I think so. I should try it for like long term. But yeah, don't demonize plants. So that would be the main thing. Don't demonize plants. It's like, what are the evidence? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the evidence through which they demonize plants is very weak. And if you just added some plants, good plants. The same thing I said to Gary, actually. I tweeted to Gary. Did you see that recent tweet to Gary about the beans? I was making fun. I was making a joke. I was having
the war on processed carbs. That's what Mark came up with. From your tweet.
So, yes, yeah, exactly. So that's funny. Yeah, so if you add beans, if you add like lettuce, if you add plants to a carnivore diet, you're not going to hurt yourself. You're just going to add more options. And you might even reduce your calorie intake.
Just don't add Snickers and Skittles.
Just don't add Snickers and Skittles.
I might. I do sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have. We're out of time. We burnt it all up. That was awesome,
man.
dude. Yeah, that was great.